Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. I'm Mariquita Solis, the Uncaged Heart Coach. I'm excited that you're joining us for this episode of Uncaged Leaders. I'm here with Toby Brown, a good friend of mine. He's an activist, a climate healer, a musician, and he's here to tell his story and his thoughts about masculinity, gender roles, what is being a man. So, thanks for joining us, Toby. I'm excited about our conversation today.
Thank you, Mariquita. It's a nice introduction there. Um, yeah, so it's a big topic and a rather interesting one, especially as
Yeah,
we see through going back in history to look into where the word man has come from, um, which is what I started to do when you asked me about this interview. So. Um, I always find it quite interesting to, find the root of what the meaning is in the root of the word and how it started to evolve. And in this case, it's evolved, I think, in quite a drastic way to how we see ourselves as males today. There's in different ways, in different spheres. Um, so when I looked into it, it seems as though man really just meant to be human, and it was given to women and men, and children were all called man because it was just a human idea. Like a woman started to get evolved into a whiffman, and then a man was a wereman. And just a fun fact that we still use the word were for werewolf, um, which is a mythical thing. But yeah, but we still, use the word man for women as well, for like a woman. Um, So I find that quite interesting. But the idea where it's come from is a thinking animal. So that's what it really meant, as identifying as being a human is a thinking animal. And I think that has kind of been taken quite far as being like quite controlling in a way and thinking and becoming dominant through the mind. And yeah, it's quite an interesting evolution, I think, of the actual term man. It's kind of become more dominant, and dominance has become, obviously quite a key thing in, um, being a man in the evolution of humanity. So it's quite sad to see that, but I don't think it's anybody's fault. I think it's something that we've just taken on just because of what it means, to be a thinker, and maybe we sometimes think a bit too much about things.
well, that's interesting. You said thinking animal, and then that means the animals that I would say that are not, well, now I'm confused. So I would say not non-human animals. I would think, are they not thinking? But that's something, yeah, then we're diminishing others, which is very
Mm.
interesting. But yeah, and man, what does that even mean? So were you born man, or would I say were you born male? Could you help me out here? How would I ask that?
Yeah, well, I think I was born a biological male.
Okay.
I think when you do these things, it goes by sex. So I'm a male sex, and then identify as a he, him. When I've done activism in the past, we go around in a circle, for example, and we would say our genders and how we want to be called. Some people are they, them, and things like that. And I wasn't sure what was going on then when people were doing that, because I had no idea about really genders. And I think the idea when it comes to LGBTQ plus is like the idea of plus means you can be identified as anything. I think that's really important because we don't want to suppress people from being able to express themselves. As soon as we start to suppress people from being able to express themselves, then um, I don't know, like you start to lose rights, and you start to um, you can't be who you are. You're being something else that someone's telling you to be, and I find that quite a scary thing. And we don't want to be heading that direction. I have joined like protests for LGBTQ plus, just for the fact that, I want people to be able to express themselves. I think it's very, very important, and we shouldn't be suppressing people from doing that.
Yeah, I just was actually at a party with my church group, LGBTQ and friends, to support them because one of my best friends was gay, and I saw his struggles. I mean, he told me about his struggles as a child. So yeah, I've always been wanting to. I mean, it's very important that we all are able to express freely. So it's always been important for me to back everyone, regardless of what society, what labels they put on you. I mean, the labels that are derogatory, which is terrible. So yes, in this aspect of you being born a biological male, what did you learn as a biological male watching your family and society, and then what society told you about how you should behave as a biological male child?
Yeah, that's interesting because I never crossed my mind thinking about me and my gender role as a male, um, or that sex. Um, but yeah, like when I was younger, I got bullied maybe because I had long hair, and so I changed schools, and that was a common thing for some reason. Um, I'm not really sure why. I was classed as dyslexic, so I never did very well in school. And then I made friends, a friend of mine who was gay, and he was a very close friend, and we got along quite well. And I didn't really think he was gay. It never really came out. And then I started to realize after a few years, like, oh, like, he identifies as being gay, and that didn't really bother me. I was like, well, you're just my friend, like. So, yeah, I never really. It was just like you hang out with more people than other people. Like it was just someone I got along with. Um, but then I think that when you're younger, you're being dominated by other like people who see themselves as alpha males. Um, I never really understood that. Because I've never felt like I've needed to do that. And so usually when you hear about people who get bullied, they start to become a bully themselves. And I never have done. I took martial arts because my dad was a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So I took jiu-jitsu, and then I did kickboxing and ninjutsu, and and I always liked that for self-defense. And I've always exercised and kept myself fit. Um, and I think I wasn't sure whether to talk about this, but I think the idea of having that discipline in that you get from martial arts is something you find in all arts. So, for example, a better way to maybe explain this is if I'm playing drums and I do like a rudiment, like a double stroke roll. It takes discipline to sit there and pat it out for a while, because you might get distracted or something, but you sit there and you start to get quite good at it. You're like, oh wow, I'm getting the knack of this. And that takes discipline. And then you can start to go off and do all sorts of different things. And then you can start to express yourself. But it takes that discipline, I think maybe away from these cultural ideas of distractions and things like that. Um, but yeah, it's a funny perception on discipline, but that's something I started to learn. And it's difficult to be able to focus on things today, especially with like TikTok stuff and all of that, where we're constantly distracted. It's hard to keep a conversation for too long with some people.
Yeah, very true. Distractions are everywhere, and that focus intention is, yeah, I used to, when my ex-boyfriend was a drummer, so I would see that, just that focus on that little pattern, boom, boom, that
Mm.
same pattern over and over and over. So yeah, that takes determination, and the dedication to do that. So, yeah. And so then when you were a young child and you were bullied, did you have
Mm.
other people defending you, or how did that play out? What did you think about that? How did they bully you, and what were they calling you a sissy, or things that youngsters do? Or not just
Um,
youngsters, adults call young boys sissies also and shame them.
yeah, well, I never really got called specific names, to identify me as being, soft or anything like that. I think it was just the idea of just being want to be an alpha male. They get a kick out of punishing somebody or showing off in front of other males, I guess. Um, but yeah, I mean, I remember when I was in at school, after break time, we'd all get together and maybe the last person who comes out from break, we would chase them. And, a whole bunch of lads would chase this other lad. And then, once we manage to catch him, if he runs out of wind, then you pile on top of him. And then that's the game done. That person's been crushed underneath all these other people. And a very, very odd sense of having fun. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's just a very strange thing that you see guys do. And it's completely different to what you see like females do. So yeah, I never really got called specific names that I remember of.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that because I never did either, but I did feel like I was, well, I felt the target of bullying and then the target of that domination, you could say, in this kind of culture that rewards, I mean, the alpha males hurting others to appear tough and to appear, well, that you are the leaders, that you're the leader. Because I remember being dragged across the gym by my hair by two young men, young boys in like fifth grade. Maybe I don't know exactly when it was.
Wow.
Maybe it was third, second grade. I don't know, but I just remember the horror of it. And what would it, entice anyone to pull someone by their hair? I had a
Mm.
ponytail by their hair across the floor. But this culture rewards that kind of behavior in young boys to not be empathetic, to do these aggressive things towards other people. And we're living in a culture now, and where are you? Because I'd like to know if you're where you are in Spain, right? In Spain, as compared to the United States. I mean, do you see a difference in the kind of societal beliefs and this domination more so in one country than the other?
Um, well, I've been here about 7 months now in Madrid. I was born in England, and when I was about 17, I moved to Canada and, went through high school there. And obviously, that was a different culture altogether, and it's quite a multicultural country. And so, it's a lot rougher in the places of England that I grew up. Um, so it's a lot more chilled out and relaxed in Canada. So there was never really any um, rough and tumble that went on in Canada. And then moved back to England after I lived 12 years in Canada, and then I've just recently moved here. I see domination in the culture in Spain through bullfighting and attacking animals for fun, really, and wounding them, bleeding them out, and then killing them. And I find that pretty inhumane. And that's funny because when you think about when I was looking into, where the word man came from, obviously it means human, or a thinking animal, but it's just defining as we are who we are as a species. But then also human comes from a different root, and the idea it comes from the Latin word humus, which means like the living part of the soil. Um, which I've always found fascinating, taking horticulture and permaculture and, you know, obviously like the biosphere and, life in itself, the geological domain is a fascinating thing. But then from humus, it went to the Romans made it into homo, which means earthling, or one who comes from the earth, or one of the earth. And then it's quite interesting the way it kind of evolved because it went to um, humanitas, which means human nature and kindness and a civilized culture. And then in Old English, it got translated into humanity.
Mhm.
And that means human nature or the quality of being human and compassionate. And I was like, wow, like, I guess when you start to think about things, you're like, that's who we are as we're a very fragile species, you know. I mean, we grow tremendously slow as a mammal. It takes about 18 years to grow fully. And for a cow, for example, it takes like 18 months, So we're very, very fragile creatures. Babies are very fragile. And the protein content in mother's milk, human mother's milk, is very, very low, So I think, talking about protein and stuff is interesting because I go to the gym and so I ask people, what's protein made out of? And you think they'd know because, I mean, they're eating it, trying to eat as much as they can because they want to go and grow the muscles, don't they? Yeah, but they don't know what it's made out of most of the time. Obviously, it's made out of amino acids. And you say, well, you know, where do they come from? The essential amino acids, what makes them? And there's only one guy that I've talked to so far. He says, oh, they're made by plants through photosynthesis. And I was like, oh, yeah, there you go. You know, Fantastic.
Well, that's good to know because I know over here we're protein crazy. In fact, in this country, I saw muffins, protein from muffins. I'm like, what's going on here? I
Hmm.
don't think, that people here are protein deficient. I don't think that I've never heard of anyone being protein deficient over here. So but that's also another thing that's equated with manliness,
Hmm.
right? Protein builds muscle. The more muscle you have, the more manly you are.
Hmm.
And then the manliness also goes back to what you were saying with killing the bullfighting, which makes absolutely no sense. What what is going on where I mean, this crowd mentality, I guess, also plays into it, gathering together to torture an innocent animal and how that is equated as power.
Hmm. Yeah, well, it's not very nice. I mean, it's through domination, isn't it? So, like you see a big guy walking around with muscles, you're thinking, well, he's the alpha male and you have to submit to him or something like that. And you can only get that way through eating lots of protein and it's just it's a rather bizarre thing. Because if you think about it, you're comparing, us to another wild animal and they're insanely strong. Like a chimpanzee could take on any human. But they have absolutely no chance. They're insanely muscular, like not even just muscular, but somehow it's insane strength. So we're really quite weak. Even the strongest guy in the world can never take on like small chimp. Um, but yeah, it's quite a funny um, juxtaposition. But yeah, I think also you see that domination in bullfighting as well. I think it's also a way to um, create this dissonance between um, animals and humans, like to say, like we're better than them, and we can, they're here for us. We breed them and we control them. We own their lives, and so something that I really cherish is my life. My life is the most important thing to me. To be able to have this experience. I mean, you only get one chance at it, as far as I'm aware. And to take that away from anybody is just insane. Because if you do that, you have no idea what your life means to you. And I think that's a deep question that we need to be asking ourselves. What does your life actually mean to you? You know? And I think that really, you should really start to think about, you start to have empathy then and compassion, and it really wakens you up.
Well, empathy is being ridiculed right now by many,
Mm.
many men and women. So it's being, of course, equated to weakness. Femininity is equated to weakness. There's nothing weaker. Well, there are things weaker, but one of the worst things is to be a woman. Uh, woman, by definition, a gendered woman, um, by gender, I guess, female. So, because they're not as intelligent, they're not as strong as men. So, I don't even know where I'm going with this because it triggers me because I'm female to think that that people are automatically placed in these roles of weakness, and the white male is the supreme, right? And they have to do everything they can to dominate, not just the white male, but domination. So women are also dominating because of that same mindset of domination is strength and power. And this is what society rewards. So some of them feel like they have no option but to go into that dominant way of lifestyle. Because if they don't dominate others, they will be dominated. So how do we get out of this circle of this belief that the only way to live is dominate? It's this hierarchy of that we're living in where there's no way out. Because if we don't care for others, I mean that's not people believe that's not sustainable. But actually the opposite is true, right? If we can stop dominating, then we all will flourish and cheer and thrive.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really part of human nature by definition, to not have kindness, and not to be compassionate. Like I said, like if you look at the history of the word, literally to like have humanity, to literally be human is to show compassion and to be kind. I mean, that's what we rely on, obviously, women to take care, and they're the ones who usually are taking care of the children, you know. I mean, where have the men gone? They're running off just, I don't know what they're doing, partying or that's not how things should be, like we do see it more where, males not just go to work, but take, like cook the food and clean the house, and you do things together, and have that symbiosis, which I think is a really key thing, and it's something you learn from nature. Um, but yeah, I think it's a funny thing, and obviously this leads off, I think, into if you are a feminist, which I am, because I
And
believe
what
that,
what is feminist? Because I know people get triggered on that term. I know
mm,
people have said to me, oh, those feminists. So I think I'm a feminist. And is that a bad thing? What is feminist?
yeah. Well, there's lots of discussions you see in talks like this about what is feminism. But as far as I'm aware, that's just for men and women to be on the same playing field. It's not about women dominating men, But they are, it's a really sad thing to think that when you look at agriculture, for example, like most of the animals in agriculture are female because they're reproductive. We exploit the reproductive system of the female reproductive system. And that is like grotesque. It's a grotesque idea,
Even
So
in
if
the
if
human
you
animals, even with women,
yeah,
we
yeah,
exploit them. All females are exploited, human and
yeah,
non, as
yeah,
baby making machines.
yeah, yeah, it's a terrifying concept. And, I don't know how you can think that is a good thing. I mean, the more you lack empathy and things, the more you become like psychopathic. Psychopaths, like, as far as I know, like kill other people. Like I think that's what they do, right? So the more you become like inert, the more you start to feel less, the more you don't care, and the more you kind of go around and if you don't have any feelings for any other living beings besides humans, I mean, it's very easy to move on from exploiting animals to exploiting humans. Um, but then it's like, well, what do you define as as a living being? Because I look at just like the biological domain. So I look at like all the kingdoms, um, plants and fungi and bacteria and animals. And there's another one that I don't know the name of in the biological domain, And it's amazing to think about the history of how this all started. How did life actually start on Earth, And really, it's a conversation between the biotic and the abiotic, the living things, the biosphere, and the non-living things, which are like tectonic plates and weather and all these non-living phenomenon that happen. And to have that all mixed together and create these carbon cycles and water cycles and this, like you could think of the Earth as like Gaia, like that's what the definition of the Earth system is. It's all living in harmony together, and that is the most fascinating thing. All the space, in space, like this is the only living planet we know of in space, the only habitable planet, and we need to take great care of it. We've not been here very long as a species, and we can't go around dominating everything thinking we know it all. To do that, you got to be very wise, and it's funny because that's the definition of being human. Homo sapien is the wise animal, the wise human, the wise earthling. But yeah, I mean, what is wise, So that's an interesting thing to talk about because my granddad always told me he was wise. And I always think, oh, I like that. But he had like white hair and stuff. So, gave him the benefit of the doubt that he's a pretty wise man. I'm still trying to think what is wise today, All right, I like that, but I'm still not really sure how can I be wise?
Well, I think that is wise when you are always wondering what it is, because once I think, when you think you've gotten to the point of wise, then you'll stop learning more. So just
Hmm.
continually questioning what is wise, I think is the way to go.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that.
So now I watched the documentary, The Manosphere, and I was very disturbed. I had to watch it in parts. Inside the Manosphere on the Netflix documentary, and hearing these young men saying that they came into the world basically discriminated against being a young man. So what is called, did you see that documentary?
Yeah, with Louis Theroux.
Yep.
Um, yeah, he's great. He's done other documentaries on incels as well, which is pretty much well, it's a very similar thing. And it's the incels that really are supporting these rich men who have trad wives and things like that. Um, so yeah, I watched it, and he does a fantastic job, does Louis? And yeah, it's really cringy to watch these people. I don't know how they live with themselves. Like, what are they doing?
I
And
don't either. Yeah, go ahead.
there's one part where this guy and he's saying how he's gonna get other wives and other girlfriends or whatever, and she didn't know about it. And he says, "Oh yeah, she knows all about it that I'm gonna get these other women." And when Louis Theroux told her, she's like, "What?" Like she had no idea. Like, and then she's like, "I don't like this guy at all. He's horrible. He's just exploiting me." And she left him because of because of the documentary. Yeah, it's a very cynical thing and completely sexist. And all these people are doing they want to be rich, and all these incels they want to be where these guys are. But to get rich is not an easy thing. People always think they're going to be millionaires. You're not going to be a millionaire. It's very difficult to be a millionaire. I know a millionaire, and he's a really nice guy. Um, but it's like, you know, that's because he did well in his business and he managed to sell it off. But it's a very difficult place to get to, and that's what these manosphere people are. The very rich men who use their platforms and their money to exploit women. And the trad wife thing is um, yeah, it's like going back in the olden days, isn't it? I mean, we need to get with the times. And like, there's no point going back in the past. Oh, I liked it back then. Well, you never lived back then, did you? And it does not benefit us. The fact we're changing means that it did not work out very well. We need to have equality.
Right. And what do you think is going to happen to these young men that follow this kind of ideology and they realize, I mean, that they're just continually struggling for more money, more money, more money. What kind of life and what kind of satisfaction would that bring them as compared to your life? I mean, what would you tell a young man that is following these influencers if you could sit down with them and talk to them? What would you tell them about what your belief system is?
Hmm. Yeah, well, it's a difficult question because I mean, these people are always going to back themselves up, and it's not their fault that they're in that place. I mean, it's because of the system and the way they're being manipulated to think this way and to think that's the only way. And it becomes very violent. These people can become very violent. Not that they're inherently violent people, but they kind of get taught that's how you're supposed to be. And yeah, but I think all I can do is go off my own experience of life, um, or show statistics and show like history and how these things shouldn't really be like that. We shouldn't be doing that. And you're going to get very unwell. You're going to get sick. And you can't take care of yourself. If you can't be kind and compassionate, you can't really have kind and compassion for yourself. It all starts with yourself. When you start to take care of yourself and be healthy, a healthy person, you start to give that out to other people. You start to be kind and compassionate to other people too. And it's give and receive. You start to create this, a better world if you do that. Um, but yeah, I think the system is inherently making people like we talk about it in climate healers is like the 5 Ds. Um, so like deception and domination and things, like they're just things that we've just not purposefully done. It's not like premeditated as such. It's just traits that were brought on in order to really protect ourselves. But then it's like we don't need to do that anymore. Like we started to get away from nature and kind of hide ourselves from nature because it's a dangerous place. You got predators and things. So we started to kind of get rid of it and so we can take care of ourselves so we can start to thrive. Um, and that's going way too far. And we're killing it all off completely. And that does not help us. Having that domination and all of that over just everything in the world does not work. It kills us. It's killing the world, you know. So we'd start to find a way to build that symbiosis, and that really gives us a purpose, a true purpose as a species, as a person, to kind of do the right thing and start to take care and look after each other.
Yeah, so there is more to life than simply money and domination. So
Mm,
what I now it just slipped out of my mind what I was going to ask you, but the the symbiosis and then that also is in relationships, the symbiosis. And
mm,
it's very unbalanced when we're looking at this patriarchal culture that is the toxic alpha male that toxic energy. It's not the healthy masculine. And then I hear women saying that men are being um, condemned for being masculine. And that's not what we're saying. We're not condemning men for being masculine. What's a healthy masculine energy look like, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult because I probably have traits that are maybe toxic masculinity, that I've not fully identified with. Like I go to the gym and I do that because I like to be able to be physically able to do things. That's just something I've just done throughout my life. And I've been in rock bands, several different bands, Pretty Shivers, then Velvet Tongues, The Lost Lonely Souls. And like when I'm playing drums, I've got my shirt off and I'm pulling my faces and I'm a wild man. And people like that, and my bandmates like that, you know, because I've got the figure that I do, and I can, I'm proud of who I am. I'm a healthy person, um, but also, I think like rock music has pretty terrible traits as well that are inherent in it. Like sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Like people think that's cool. But it's pretty toxic at the same time. Um, but yeah, so I mean, like that's why I've got long hair because I'm a rocker. But I think of it, well, if I shave my head, I don't think that gives me the same kind of image as what I'd want to have for like my own philosophical views. Um, so I think about it like if we're clear cutting all the trees from the world, that's like an example of me shaving off my head, type of thing. Like I feel like I want there to be lots of, life thriving everywhere. So let it all grow, let things grow.
Yeah.
So I've got a different perception of certain rock music. I think if you've got a platform, you should be able to use that to give out good information, to help people and important stuff. So I like rock bands, like Ronnie James Dio, um, who was a great vocalist, and you know he had quite an interesting philosophy, and he's a really really nice guy, and and then you got different people like Richie Blackmore, and he's known as a guitarist, and he's known as being quite an angry chap, but they're both phenomenal musicians, but they've got completely different perceptions, and some have been taken away by the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and some will keep, like a good like spirit in, you know, really nice people. So
Yeah, that's very interesting because when I think about a rock star and you think about the groupies and they're having sex with everyone and they're doing drugs, like you're saying, right? And
mm,
and it's just acceptance. Oh, we accept that's because who we are and who they are, right? That's the
mm,
way the masculine the male, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but the the manly rock star is he has a harem and it's okay, and if you're going to be married to him or be with him, you just better accept it. And it's
mm,
almost like, why are we accepting that as okay? I mean, I've accepted that, and then I don't really accept it, but I've come to know that that's normalized in society, and there it is again, where this kind of behavior and is it's hurting whoever the partner is. I guess maybe they like it and maybe they're okay with it. I mean, who am I to say? I would say I wouldn't be okay with it. Maybe they're okay with it, but I would not say it's a culture that really is prioritizing healthy relationships. So tell me about your relationships. Like you're married, right?
yes. Um, so when you do look at actual successful rock stars, they're completely clean. They don't drink, they don't do drugs, and they probably have done. and they've stopped because they could not make it as a rock star. They couldn't keep it going. They killed
Crash.
themselves. Yeah. So, Alice Cooper and lots of different rock stars who completely clean, and a lot of them you see them always calling up the family. That's a tough life, like always traveling the world, never getting to see your family grow up. And to be a true rock star is the most difficult thing ever. And or you could just be a maniac and be a rock star and just have all the groupies and you know have all the sex and the drugs and do what the cultural idea of a rock star is. But you're going to burn yourself out, like you said, and that's not really how it works. It's a job, and it's an art, and you got to take it seriously, and people really don't. But that's something that my wife and I really talked about. Like, are we going to be able to make this happen? Are we going to be able to have a family with me if it does take off? Because we're looking to, sort of do tours and things, and um, I don't think it'd be very, very easy. It will not be easy at all to be able to have a family and be traveling the world. And it's not fair on her. Um, and musicians are poor people. Unless you make it big, you're going to be pretty poor. You don't really make much money at all. So yeah, it's not really that doable today.
And
You know.
what would you say are the important foundations for a healthy relationship?
Um, to help each other, to talk about things that you don't hide things from each other. Be open about things and make sure you talk a lot. Always talk about stuff. Um, like we talk about gender things, which I never really crossed my mind until she started to bring it up. Because that's stuff that she's interested in, and she's interested in um, philosophy and old religions, paganism, and stuff like that. And I never really knew too much about it, but that really brought me into like deep history, and I feel like I started to find that fascinating, and that's within her, So it's I started to really see who she is. We want to get to know each other, and helping each other, doing things together. Um, yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to find love. Um, that like I was a bit older when I found her. It was took took a lot of searching. Um, we actually met on a dating website called Vegly, which is a vegan and vegetarian website to meet people like that because I found it difficult. That was a difficult thing for me, and so it's being in relationships with people who weren't, and so I feel like that really worked out for us, and I feel like that also ties back into having compassion for living beings, and how that ties into being a man. Because I feel like there's no point exploiting other living beings in order for me to be able to get my protein and things like that. Like it's nonsense. So there's no need to do that. There's no need to exploit animals or anybody at all to be able to live my life healthfully. You know, it's a it's kind of lies that were fed through culture and being advertised, all this nonsense. We got to look at the data, look at analyses of analyses, and really see what's going on, because we're fed a lot of lies.
Right. Yeah. And what about when you grew up with your parents? Was your dad oh, no, I think you said he was a black belt. You were a black belt, right? And your dad was a black belt also in jujitsu? Or
No, I always went off to do different, like kickboxing and ninjutsu and things. I never stuck to jujitsu, but he was a black belt in jujitsu. Um,
was he
yeah,
did he express emotions?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
all emotions, you know.
yeah. Well, he's got a great character, does my dad. I'm very much like him. Um, yeah, he's a really really good guy. You know, he's taught me a lot. Same with my mother. You know, like we've always done stuff together. We played squash together, um, and yeah, we have a good time. We've always had a great bond. So, and same thing with my like my grandparents as well. I had a strong connection with my granddad and my grandmother. My granddad on my dad's side was more difficult to have a connection with. I think that was through drink. Um, there was no problems, you know, like talking and doing stuff together, but I couldn't really do much with him. But my nan was ace, she was great. We would always go on bike rides, and she was crazy. She would rugby tackle you and all sorts. So yeah, she was a real really on fire. She was brilliant.
Well, I'm glad that you had that kind of environment growing up and a supportive environment where you were able to express emotions and not be shamed for them because there's so many young men that are shamed for emotions and they grow up and shut down. And again, what we saw in that documentary where you have to shut down your emotions because if you don't, you will be acting like those young men in the inside the manosphere. Well, what would you say to some young man that doesn't even know how to express emotions? I mean, that is afraid to express emotions. What would you say to that young man?
Um, yeah, I think there needs to be a male figure in your life, um, whether it's a friend, an older friend, but you need to have someone who has a healthy outlook on life, like um, not someone who is, in the manosphere. You don't want that because that's not going to help you. Um, but yeah, I think you shouldn't be afraid to be able to express yourself, and the way I've always done it is through having hobbies and things like that. And when you do that, you start to meet different crowds of people, who are interested in the same thing. And then it kind of branches off into other different things you'd like to do, like um, if you like playing like the drums, for example, for me, you start to make contacts with videographers and photographers and, all different arts that start to come into the picture. And, I think you got to have things like, it's about to express yourself in that way, really. You shouldn't be afraid to. And I think them are things that bring out feelings. You shouldn't be afraid to show your feelings. You shouldn't be afraid to cry. Like, I think, lots of men hold back their tears. And like, even when I talk about how much my life means to me, because I went through a phase when I was younger and, I was interested in philosophy and things. And that really got me thinking deeply about what life means, like the questions of like what is life? What does life, what's the point in it? I mean, what's it all about? So like deep philosophical questions. And then you start to just think, well, it's about just expressing yourself. It's about taking like I keep saying, like taking care of each other. Because if there was no one taking care of me, I wouldn't be here, would I? You know? So you shouldn't be afraid to do things for people because like what you put out is what you get back. And if it's not, you should always just keep trying. It's having that drive just to always help people. And things come back to you. They really do. And that's something that you shouldn't be dominating people and telling people what to do. You should work together. And I think it's really important that we really listen to each other as well. If someone has troubles, listen, because lots of people don't listen, and that's really um, something we need to really do, listen to each other. Stop talking over the top of each other and listen to what people have to say and look out for things. So if someone's saying that they're okay when they're not, make sure that they are actually okay. Don't be afraid to do that because really it doesn't really matter if you identify as whatever you do as a gender. Like that's completely nothing to do with it. Like if someone's got something really bad, you should be able to help them. And you shouldn't think, well, I'm a man, I shouldn't have to, or they should fight it for themselves. Like you should, because what if you're in that situation, you know, and you're being trodden on? Do you just feel angry and upset, and there's no compassion inside of yourself to be able to realize that that's what you need is compassion for yourself? Like you don't want to be there, do you? You want to be able to um, find compassion and give it to people because it's the most it's one of the most important emotions to be able to have. And you should be able to have all the emotions because if you don't, then you're not really living your life, are you? I mean, the less emotions you have, the less life you're experiencing. You want to go out there and be able to experience as much as you can. It's the only chance you get at it. So, let yourself out and don't be afraid to.
Yes, amen to that. And you're really going up against the idea of this hyper independence that so many men have, and now women have it as well. I don't need anybody, right? I don't need you. I've got my job. I can buy my own self. I can buy flowers for myself. I don't need a man to buy me flowers. I don't need a partner to buy me flowers. I don't need anyone to do anything for me, right? And this is what you said was so true that we've always needed each other. And this is killing us, this idea, this hyper independence that that's what power really is. This
Mm,
misconstrued idea of society that society has driven into our being.
mm. Yeah, I mean, there's no like culture there, there's no you're not doing things by yourself, are you? People have done them things for you and you're paying for it, to get them flowers or to get that food or to get that house or, like it's all a network of people coming together. You're not doing it by yourself. That's something that's apparently behind the curtains or in the smog of lies that you're leading, like you need to have a sense of community. And you don't want to lose that because you'll be so lonely, You're becoming a lonely person if you're doing that. Um, yeah, the community is so important. You got to really, what if you're an old person, you're getting older, someone's gonna have to look after you, you know. You need to have people to help you do things, just like when you're a baby, so
Exactly.
um yeah, you got to be there for
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah, and this facade, I mean, this is what unfortunately these young men feel like this is what's drawing in them in is a sense of community, but it's the facade of superficiality, wealth, grandiose domination. It's not true community in the sense of connection. And I mean, what would you say to that? I mean, it's something that is really blinding to the youth that they are
Mm,
really sucked into these beliefs that if they do this, if they oppress others, they'll be part of that community, and that's why they do it.
mm. Yeah, well, I was just thinking about, my own experience when I was younger. I lived in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I lived with some mates, and you know, it was great. We had an absolute smashing time, And then one time came when I had this funky thing with my shoulder, and I couldn't work anymore. I started to get a wasting in my muscle. And it was a trapped nerve by a tendon. Just all of a sudden, for some reason, it grew, and I couldn't do the labour work that I've always done. And yeah, I couldn't really get any jobs. So I was basically like, I had one arm. I couldn't really move it. And then I couldn't afford to live with my friends. I couldn't afford rent. And, and then everyone had to leave. And it was a pretty heartbreaking experience. And when I was, when that was happening, I went to 7-Eleven, to get snacks and stuff. And I saw a guy who was my age sitting there crying, and he was a homeless chap, my age. And I was like, wow, like that could be me. That's going to be me, you know? If it wasn't for my parents and for support, some people don't have parents and support, and that's where they live, and like that should be a human right to be able to have accommodation, to be able to have food, and some people are denied that, and it's not their fault, like it's insane. And so that was a real like eye opener for me. It's like Jesus, like one thing could go wrong and you're just left with nothing, and if it's not for other people to help you, then you're going to be that person, and that's not what you want. And that's what you're going to keep making happen if you don't make that community around you. And really, that's what you need. Because something might happen and you're a goner.
Very true. A real community that is of compassion and kindness and not afraid to show feelings, all feelings, not just some feelings. So yeah, this is really cutting to the core of these issues. So I see that we're coming to the end of our hour, and make sure y'all subscribe and like. So y'all also, well, tell us, I want to hear your final thoughts on all of this. I mean, what really being a man is, or a human. But first, I want you to tell people where they can find you, tell them about your band, where they can get in contact with you if someone wants to reach out.
Yes, well, um, I was in a band called Pretty Shivers, who's going strong. Um, the other bands, there's one, The Lost Lonely Souls, by Cale Michael, who he gets people together and we do collaborations and things, and he gets stuff coming out every once in a while. But Pretty Shivers is still going strong. Now they got a new drummer. Um, I don't really have any big social media at the moment. I do, if there's anyone in Madrid and has contacts um, for me to do talks, I do talks on the environment and on similar things like this. Um, then don't be afraid to give me, a knock on the door. It's my email's Toby Brown 20 at yahoo.com. And so that's yeah, I don't really have any platforms to follow, unfortunately. I just go around doing my thing and helping out the community and spreading information and education, really.
But you're on
Um,
Facebook. They can find you there if they, is that right?
yeah, I'm on Facebook. Yeah, yeah. It's Toby Brown. Yeah.
Okay. Great. And so give us your final thoughts. I mean, for maybe a young man or an older man that really is scared to step out of this role of domination that's not serving him, what would you say, your final thoughts to that man?
Yeah, well, if if that's what you hear, you're looking for a way out because you are seeing maybe things aren't going the right way, which if you're in that sphere, then they're not, that's for sure. But yeah, like I said, there's a community who is there to accept you because no matter what you've been through, people you can always turn over a new leaf, and you want to be able to really live your life to the full. You don't want to be told what to do by people. You don't want to be walking around in a uniform, not be able to express yourself. So yeah, like it's part of growing up. Like we need to grow up and get with the times because we want to be able to um, play our role, I'd say, play our role as a species and really, you know, get along with each other, get along with all the life, you know. Um, I think we've got a role to play, and that role is not to conform to some um, crazy ideology that suppresses everything. That's just killing everything. That's not going to get you anywhere. So, um, yeah, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. It makes you stronger. Like Um, yeah, because when you see people, I feel like, they're not mentally strong. I feel like there's something there that's really holding them back from being able to really be who they are. Because you're not being yourself. So yeah, be yourself, really.
Right. Yes. Take the time to just sit with yourself and see who is really there underneath all that facade of the cars, the money, and the domination. Who is the real person underneath that? So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Toby, and thanks everyone for watching. I really appreciate you coming on this show and your wisdom and everything you're doing for others and stepping up with your voice. We need people like you, strong human beings that take a stand. So, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much, Mariquita. It's brilliant.
Well, y'all, then we will see you next week. Make sure you check out Toby. Look for him on Facebook and on YouTube, right? What was your band's name again?
Pretty Shivers.
Pretty Shivers. Look for them on
Yeah.
YouTube. All right. We'll see you next week, everyone. Goodbye.